All right, so now it should be fine.
Yeah, it looks pretty good.
How does that work?
It looks good. It sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go then.
All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to the Sky Sports F1 podcast with me, Matt Baker. Now, in a season that keeps on delivering mountains of storylines both on and off the track, Singapore proved no different. So to help me make sense of it all, I'm joined by the 2016 Formula One World Champion Nico Rosberg in a car on his way back from the airport, alongside Matt Gallagher, co-host of P1 with Matt and Tommy. Hello to both of you. Look, Nico, firstly, thank you very much for joining us. I know you've had a few issues with flights, but you're joining us from a car. We hope the internet survives all okay. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I hope it's going to be manageable, but the trip was adventurous. So in the car at the moment. But I'm great, and it's an honor to be on this with Matt squared, 2 times Matt. So let's do this.
Matt, tell me about the time how many times have you met Nico? You seem quite friendly.
Yeah, I've met Nico a few times over the years. We've driven in a Lamborghini together. That was good fun. We've met in Bahrain a few times. I remember him photobombing me when I was filming. That was also great. But yeah, we spent a little bit of time together, and yeah, Nico's a good guy.
Very good. Well, this should be good. And fingers crossed for the Wi-Fi or the 5G connection, whatever you have, Nico, in the south of France. Fingers crossed.
It's looking very good at the moment.
It's looking very good. That's all we can ask. Right, here's what's coming up. We're going to do our championship check-in, discuss how Lando Norris's win will affect has affected the driver and constructors championships. We're going to talk about McLaren's chances in the final 6 races and also the sprint races, which I think could be quite key to the championship going forward. We'll talk a bit about Daniel Ricciardo as well, and we'll also talk about Max Verstappen's threat to quit Formula One based on the swearing that we heard in the press conference earlier on in the week. But let's start, shall we, with the championship check-in. And look, a hugely dominant display from Lando Norris, led from pole position all the way through to the checkered flag, 20 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen. Here's how the Drivers' Championship looks then. Verstappen on 331 points, Norris on 279, that's a 52-point gap, and then Leclerc, Piastri just behind that, but I think we can probably agree it is a 2-horse race, although maybe you guys might disagree with me on that. But I think the Constructors' Championship is quite interesting after this weekend because McLaren sit at the top on 515, Red Bull on 475, that's a 41-point gap, but nipping at the heels are Ferrari on 441 points, that's the 34-point gap to Red Bull. And Nico, I want to get your thoughts really on the Constructors' Championship because for Red Bull probably need to be looking at Ferrari, don't they? Red Bull are going to finish 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, so much is going on. Yeah, it's unbelievably exciting. And yes, Red Bull is under threat even to finish 3rd in the Constructors' Championship because they really only have one driver, and even that one driver is kind of struggling at times with the car. And Ferrari do have 2 drivers, McLaren have 2 drivers, and that's kind of making it all the more difficult for them.
Matt, I was looking into the financial implications of how, if they finish 3rd compared to 1st, it's about an $18 million. We think. I mean, we don't know the exact figures, but it's about $18 million. That essentially, could you argue that's the cost then of keeping Sergio Perez on this season?
Well, look, I don't have access to the financial statements within Red Bull, but clearly there are reasons that they've kept Perez. Of course, Mexico coming up is a big old pull for that, and we've heard many rumours about why he may still be in that seat. But look, it's been a strange kind of transition for me as a fan to watch Red Bull go from this cutthroat driver in, driver out, no, you're not performing, get out, to now, no, Perez, you can have another season. Now, let's see how you get on. So there's clearly a lot more behind the scenes going on there. But look, there's a lot of talk as well about development, wind tunnel time, this sort of stuff. Is finishing 3rd actually that bad? You get a little bit more time working on future cars. So it's, a lot of things at play.
Nico, when you look at it and you look at Sergio Perez's performance over the course of the whole year, I guess. But look, I mean, he scored 1 point in the last 2 races. Yes, he was unlucky, wasn't he, in Baku, obviously, with the crash with Sainz. But it quite clearly is now having a very tangible cost impact, isn't it? Or financial impact on Red Bull. Yeah,
sure, of course. I mean, it's a difficult situation for them. The thing is that they don't really have a replacement either, because Tsunoda, they don't see him as quite strong enough to be replacing Perez. Ricciardo is even on his way out, as per the rumors at the moment. So there's not really a replacement, and that's making it even more difficult. And it's so strange though with Perez, because we all know he's a good driver, and at times he was actually challenging Max for the world championship in small segments, like even last year. And now he's just somehow dropped so far back. It's very strange. So anyways, yeah, they're giving him a chance now until the end of the year, obviously, and I think they still need to review it again then for next year. And that's another reason why these rumors are coming that they want to try Lawson out, because Lawson, if he does amazingly well for these last 6 races, then certainly he would be considered for the main Red Bull seat for next year.
Interesting. Okay, so you think if Lawson does come in for Ricciardo, which we'll come on to talk about a bit later, but that's the rumour, you think Lawson is very much a contender then for the Red Bull seat? Yeah, interesting.
He would, yeah, certainly. There's no reason why not.
Yeah. Matt, who else is on the table? I mean, maybe Isaac Hadjar in F2. He's second in the championship at the moment, isn't it? But I mean, I guess it says a lot, isn't it, that we're not going, yeah, there's this one driver here that everyone believes should have that seat.
Yeah, and you look back to when Red Bull had such a host of young drivers that they could select from years ago to now. The stage of it's not particularly strong. And I think even Christian Horner said that he kind of mentioned George Russell's name and everyone was like, oh, George Russell. Okay. All right. Maybe they're going to consider something completely outside of the pool of drivers that they have. And look, with Perez, they did the same, right? They brought him in. So it looks as if they're just as likely to just look up and down the grid to see who's performing.
Nico, can you see George Russell in a Red Bull in 26?
George Russell, that was a bit of a knife thrown towards Toto there, I felt, because it puts the pressure on Toto to make a decision, because I mean, George doesn't have a contract, and so if Christian could be really naughty and just try and really snatch him away from there and try and lock him into a contract already now, which I don't know if George would even be interested, but it does add the pressure for Toto, a comment like that.
Yeah, well, certainly Christian and Toto have been trying to steal each other's drivers all season, I guess, haven't they? And who knows what would happen with George. All right, let's talk then about the Drivers' Championship, and obviously a dominant performance then for Lando in Singapore. Nico, just really get your reflections then on that win for Lando. Hugely impressive, wasn't it? And I guess, could you argue Verstappen-esque in terms of the Verstappen performances last year, winning by 20 seconds, 30 seconds? It had an edge to it, didn't it? It looked very, very comfortable from the outset.
Yes, that's true. I mean, it was extremely strong the whole weekend. He led every session except for FP1, if I'm not mistaken. So leading every session, driving brilliantly, and even under the maximum pressure in qualifying, he was like on the ropes a little bit towards the end there because of qualifying being very disrupted. And then he just pulled this great lap out the bag, comfortably again on pole position. So the super driving, and then in the race, the pace that he had was off the charts, because for so many laps he was 1 second quicker than anybody else on the grid. And so within 30 laps or so, he'd pulled out 30 seconds almost on Verstappen. Then at the end of the race, I mean, he just slowed down a bit and whatever. And otherwise, that gap would have been 40, 50 seconds easily towards the end of the race. So crazy, crazy pace. So it's a very, very impressive display. And that's what also tells us that Lando is definitely has a shot for this World Championship.
Yeah, he certainly does. Matt, what the one of the stats that was quite interesting yesterday, I thought, was that was Lando's first pole, not his first pole. So obviously he started on pole, but then he finished lap 1 from pole in the lead of a race, and he's never done that before in his career. I just wonder, do you think that's a bit of a monkey off the back now that he's finally got that done at this point in his career? Because I guess that as a Formula One driver, if you start on pole and you don't end the first lap in first place, it's not ideal, is it?
It's going to be a confidence builder, sure. I mean, everybody makes a massive deal about this. I'm sure in Lando's head, it's nowhere near as big as what everyone speaks about. But of course, he's kept the lead, and this is what Lando can do. When he is in the lead, he's driven away. He showed that in Miami when he got a little bit fortunate. In Zandvoort when he got through on Max there, just literally drove away. So he's got that side of it side of him in there. He's a race winner. He can do this. It's just he's put himself in so many difficult positions through not getting a great start that has impacted his race quite a bit. And I can't believe I'm saying that from Miami to now is the same points gap between Lando and Max as it has been, considering the McLaren performance over the last however many races. I think that's more testament to Max getting the most out of that car. But yeah, Lando, I think this is a confidence builder for sure. And as well, the way he celebrated, or lack of celebration, he's just like, yep, cool, on to the next one, going to win the next 6. It's not the same emotion as maybe we saw when he first won.
I would like to disagree with you. You know that I sometimes like to say a different opinion. I think when everybody is like kind of repeating every day, Lando, 7 times you've started on pole, because including the 2 sprint races, and 7 times you come out the first lap not first. What are you doing wrong? And are you worried that you're going to get it wrong again tomorrow? And it ends up adding a lot of pressure. Because you really start to be like, wow, am I not even able to do a good start? And am I going to mess it up again tomorrow? And is everybody going to keep telling me again, like, it's your 8th time that you're never able to get back first from the lap 1? So that does add a lot of pressure. So I think he was under a lot of pressure there, especially at the start. And again, he just delivered awesomely. Where then, which I go into another topic now, where then it went very strange was the mistakes that he was doing in the race. That for me, it kind of baffled me a little bit what was going on there, because he hit the wall twice, and both were like really severe, almost race-ending moments, where he was quite lucky not to be DNF, and that was like once he went miles off the track in a hairpin, outbraking, like, but really not a small outbraking, like a massive outbraking. And the other time, he hit the same wall that George Russell hit last year, where he went crashing out on the last lap of the race last year. And what you don't remember is he went off the track again when he was fighting a back, or I think passing a back marker, which was a Williams. He went off the track again. So there's 3 moments here, and that's so strange. Like, I can't remember myself or a Max Verstappen or whatever, or Lewis, when leading so comfortably with like 30 seconds, making 3 major mistakes like that. That was a bit strange. I mean, I know Singapore is so hard, concentration, physically, it's so tough. But it was, I don't know what it's down to, that there's so many little, but we know that from Lando, that he tends to make those little errors all the time, everywhere. We've seen that from him. And he needs to iron that out if he wants to fight for the championship this year.
He can't afford another slip up, can he? He can't afford to drop points like that if he'd crashed out the race. I guess though, Matt, it kind of, in terms of the luck of a championship or across the whole season, you look at what happened in Baku in qualifying last weekend and you go, yeah, that was really unlucky, Lando. But then I guess you touch the wall twice in Singapore, and actually, does it balance itself out across the season?
Oh, that's a difficult thing to say. I think he had everything under his own control with those touches of the wall. That was a mistake from him that he's very much counting his lucky stars that he was able to finish that race, because I'm not sure how he would have bounced back from that, throwing away a 25-second lead, dominating the race and being back in this championship hunt. Whether it evens out or not, I'm not sure. I'm sure some people on Twitter will work that all out, but it's you make your own luck in Formula One most of the time, especially when it comes to driver errors. So was it a Max Verstappen-esque drive? I don't think we see the same from Max with those near-ending errors, but it was close. It was still an unbelievable drive, something that almost perfect, but a little bit lucky at the same time.
All right, so let's talk about the Drivers' Championship in terms of what he now has to do, Lando. 8.7 points off Verstappen per race. And I just pose the question, Nico, of how important the sprint races are going to be going forward. We've got 3 of them of the 6. So 50% of the races coming up have sprint races. Austin, Brazil and Qatar. It's 8 points for a sprint win. So on the face of it, if you go, well, you've only got 6 races to make up 8.7 points per race, you go, that's a really tall order. But you add in the sprint races, and Nico, do you think now it's actually more likely that Lando will catch Max?
Well, Max will not be happy with F1 for bringing in all these sprint races. Because, I mean, those 3 times 8 points, is that what you said? That a win is 8 points? Yeah. That's a lot of points. Like, that is massive. And with the way his car is going, that adds a lot of pressure to Max. I mean, it's really, I really think this could go down to the wire, which is just incredibly exciting. I mean, because for Lando can seriously win, and he's going to get Oscar's help as well at some point. So then he can really win. That he can win all the races remaining. And for Max to finish second every race remaining is so difficult. It's almost impossible because you have Oscar, you have the Ferraris, you have the Mercedes, who occasionally is brilliant. It's almost impossible for him to finish second all the time. So it's really, I mean, this is going to be super exciting.
And then you've got the other factor, which is kind of interesting. And Matt, we were talking about this, weren't we, just before we started recording, of this autumn break that we've now got, essentially a month off, 3 weeks to a month off, depends on which way you look at it. I wonder what the impact will be of this month off. Obviously, it's not like summer, is it, where you shut down and teams stop working? This is, the teams are in full development mode and can keep progressing on the car.
Yeah, Red Bull will be breathing a sigh of relief, I think, to be able to just sit back and really analyse what's gone on. And how I see it is we rock up to Austin and Red Bull still haven't figured it out and start winning races again. Then, like Nico said, I think it goes down to the wire and we really could have a title battle that I don't think anybody dreamed of after we saw the Bahrain result. That was looking like a Max walkover. But yeah, if Austin, it's still close. You've got 4 teams that can easily, Lando could get a first place, Max finishes 7th or 8th. That's a huge swing of points. We haven't seen that much. And that's the reason why Max still has this really healthy lead. But it's so possible. It's in McLaren's hands. They are absolutely the fastest team in Formula One right now. But Austin's going to be, it's a bit more of a traditional track. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they all stack up there because it's going to paint a picture, I think, for the rest of the season.
Nico, what if you had this break, which you didn't have in your Formula One career, but if you had an autumn break, as it were, in Formula One, how would you have treated it? How would you have approached it?
As a driver, I mean, what's between Singapore and Austin? Hawaii. I would be doing 3 weeks in Hawaii. On the way to Austin with a stopover in Malaysia because it's Petronas 50 years. So I'm sure they would have asked me to go. I'm sure they would have asked me to go to Malaysia to do a big celebration for Petronas, which in fact Lewis and George are doing tomorrow, and then off to Hawaii and have a lovely time with my wife Vivian. So that would have been my plan. And I'm sure a lot of the drivers actually are just going to use the time to do some training. And I know a lot of them have a lot of PR work and everything, and maybe simulator work, but most of the time just time off training. What's interesting for me also is the teams, because you know that the teams usually from end of spring, summer, they start to put like almost 100% resources into next year. And with the championship fight going on like that, though, I wonder if Red Bull need to like kind of reallocate more resources actually to this year now and kind of backtrack on that. And McLaren obviously probably still need to be pushing really hard on this year. And that's also an interesting dynamic, how much resources teams allocate then to this year's car.
It's fascinating, isn't it? And quite unique. I'm intrigued, though, Nico, that you'd say that you think drivers are going to be taking such a break, or you think it will be mainly holiday. I mean, would you not have spent more time at the factory back in that sort of period? Would you not be on the simulator? You think more of the drivers are going to be away from their teams during that period?
Well, it depends. Like in my time, the simulator was limited in its ability to make us immediately go faster or myself drive faster. So perhaps I would have gone then and do one day prep Austin. Yeah, so I would have done one day prep Austin, do some laps in Austin there, just to get the rhythm going, and then that would have been enough. Because simulators are still somewhat distant from the actual real thing, and it always will be. And one of the main reasons is because a tire is so difficult to put in numbers, because a tire dynamically there's so much going on in a tire, with distortion, with grip, with contact patch, with even the molecules, the temperatures, and it's just impossible to really 100% correctly put that in numbers, which is required for it to be modeled, and put into the simulator code or whatever, and therefore it's always going to be up to a certain extent useful, but it will never be 100% realistic.
Yeah. Very good explanation there of why simulators not 100% realistic, like you say. All right, let's move on and talk about Daniel Ricciardo. Matt, I'll come to you first on this one. I mean, it sounds like it was Daniel Ricciardo's last race. Certainly that was the messaging that we seemed to get across the whole weekend. He was prepared, this is what he said, prepared for this maybe being it. as you sort of sit here now and reflect on how this has all come to be, what are your sort of feelings and reflections on the sort of Daniel Ricciardo of the last few years?
Well, I mean, the main feelings are focusing on the weekend that has just gone by. I feel as though if this is to be his last race weekend that we've just seen, he deserved a lot more from the team in terms of clarity of what's actually going on. Not just himself, but I think everybody that supports him, that's fans of him. You want to know when your favourite driver's having his last weekend, not ifs, buts, maybes, oh, we're going to analyse this, we're going to assess that. When I think everyone reading between the lines, it looks as if Daniel Ricciardo is absolutely not going to be in the car in Austin. Whether Daniel Ricciardo actually deserved to be in that seat is another discussion. He didn't go in there and destroy Yuki Tsunoda like some people had hoped, and the fairy tale of getting to Red Bull never happened, the main seat that is. But for me, whether it's contracts or what, the reason that they haven't actually announced it, I don't know. But I just feel as though some common sense was required there, because doing a guard of honour and clapping him, and then that's all of his friends, and you're seeing all of this unfold and thinking, well, actually, it's not been decided yet. That's the whole PR statement that's happened right now. So it was a very odd thing to watch unfold this weekend from my perspective.
Yeah, you're right. I agree with that. I mean, it would have been. He deserves a really nice send off if it was his last weekend, and this kind of like, we don't actually know what's going on. That was not. But again, we don't even know if it's going to happen. So, yeah, that's not a nice situation. He deserves better than that.
Nico, I just wonder, when you reflect on your retirement and how you decided to retire, I was reading up on a few of your quotes when you decided in 2016. You said, "I've climbed my mountain, I'm on the peak, so this feels right." You very much did it on your own terms. You bowed out at the very pinnacle of the sport, being a world champion. And when you look at what's happening with Daniel now, is this kind of the situation that you didn't want to happen for your own career, where it felt like kind of a slow deterioration, I guess, of his ability in a car?
Yeah, that would have been definitely part of my decision. Yes, because I would have really wanted to avoid dropping further down the order until one day I get fired, which you never know. Yeah, as you're getting older and as things progress, one day the time will come, where the young generation is knocking on the door and you'll be replaced. So that's definitely something that I would have wanted to avoid. Of course, I still would have had time probably because I was still young, but in any case, for me, it was important to have it in my own hands, because we saw. I mean, look at that. Yeah, I mean, Daniel now. That's not really a worthy ending. Sebastian Vettel also, the way his career ended, I think also is just not really worthy. And it's something. That last moment that carries me for the rest of my life. So it is powerful and important for me to get it right. And in hindsight, I know it sucked at the time for many people because everybody was enjoying the battle with Lewis, but also, I mean, for myself and my family, it was the right decision.
One of his final acts then of Formula One, if that was to be his last race, was to take a fastest lap away from Lando Norris. And Matt, from sort of a fan perspective on this, Stella raised an interesting point after the race. He said the Red Bull's relationship with the junior team needs to be addressed. He was saying that they need to exist in an autonomous manner because it's a constructors' championship, a drivers' championship, not a coalition championship. And does it leave a bit of a bitter taste in the mouth when you look at a sister team taking points away? Like, how do you see it?
Well, I've watched Formula One for so many years now that it kind of feels normal that Red Bull have two teams, and perhaps that shouldn't be the case, that it's normalised that this can happen. It's hard to police, isn't it? It's not as if they're going over the team radio and going, Daniel, come in for fastest lap, we're going to go take it away from Lando. So there is a little bit of a question mark over, did Daniel just want to set fastest lap? For me, the gut feeling is no. I feel like there's obviously things that go on behind closed doors. Should it happen? I mean, for the integrity of the sport, no. It should be a level playing field for everybody, and you shouldn't be able to just send out a second team to do that if that is what they were doing. But look, will it be? It just comes up, doesn't it? Like, I remember when Tsunoda pulled over, I think in Zandvoort, and then everyone was questioning, did they do that to benefit Max? It always comes up every now and again, this second team discussion. Does it come up enough to be a problem? No, because RB aren't anywhere near the front particularly. But still, addressed, sure, but how are they going to do it? How do they police it?
So you think it needs to be penalised, Matt? So Matt,
No, I'm not.
Heavily penalised.
I'm not sure how you got that from what I said, but
The line went a bit weird there, yeah.
must have been the signal, Nico.
Yeah. Nico, what do you think?
That's that was a bit like a Max Verstappen, no comment in the press conference.
I don't think they should be penalised, no, but I don't know how you police it.
I have something. I've lost my voice a little bit there.
Oh, brilliant.
This is a perfect segue into our sort of final thing that I want us to talk about, and that is Verstappen's, now threat. I mean, the quotes that came out after the race yesterday were quite extraordinary. He is genuinely threatened to leave Formula One. He revealed after the race that his punishment for swearing in the press conference earlier in the weekend could dictate his future in the sport. For a bit of context, on Friday, he was ordered to accomplish some work of public interest after using an expletive in the press conference. He then, as you've alluded to, Nico, gave very short answers both on Saturday and on Sunday in the press conferences. He then held his sort of unofficial press conference away from the FIA. But just to add on a few quotes from what he said, these kind of things definitely decide my future as well. When you can't be yourself or deal with these silly things, I'm at the stage of my career where you don't want to be dealing with these things all the time. So, Nico, I mean, look, you spoke very well on this on Saturday after, when you were all on the grid ahead of qualifying. What do you make of what's going on with this whole situation? Because it's got out of hand, hasn't it? It's got quite extreme.
Yeah, I mean, I understand it needs to be a little bit discussed because you have children watching as well, and of course it's something that needs to be a little bit under control. But I think with the bleeping out, I think that works really well because you want to let the gladiators be the gladiators. So that's my take on it. Then how was it handled? Probably instead of just making community service like that, I think it would have been worthy of just a discussion and kind of a little warning or something, or please Matt, please Max, kind of avoid or whatever. But to make it such a public thing, not ideal. From the FIA, I would say. And then for Max, I mean, it's interesting. That means that on his mind, he is not, and he's always said that he's not going to be here another 5 or 10 years. So on his mind, maybe he, even with the situation now of his car getting slower and the situation in the team in Red Bull and everything adding up, he's saying that, if I win this world championship, I've got 4 in a row. Maybe I'll just take a year off and enjoy life in a different way. It just shows that it's kind of there, right, in his mind. It doesn't mean that he's actually going to do it, but it's interesting that for him, he's a little bit easygoing about the future. But interesting.
It seemed a very, I mean, he's quite a straight talking guy, isn't he? I don't think he would have said it if he wasn't necessarily meaning it. I mean, Matt, what do you make of the fact that this all kind of stemmed, didn't it, from the FIA president Mohammed Ben Sulayem making a comment earlier on in the week saying that he didn't want drivers swearing over team radio. I mean, from your perspective, where do you see that argument? It does give us an insight into it's so rare, isn't it, in sport that we actually hear what a person who's competing at that point actually thinks.
It's a strange battle for the FIA to have taken. It reminds me of when there was Hamilton and his jewellery, and that was a massively public thing as well, and what he can wear in the car. And it feels like they went at Max for some reason with this power struggle that's going on, and Max doesn't care. We can see that already. He'll do whatever he wants, and that's that's it. But I think it's a weird thing because Formula One team radios, you have best 10 team radios, and it's all everyone's swearing, we're all laughing about it then, and this is kind of part of the sport. It's intense. Drivers are under huge physical pressure and mental pressure to win. It's probably the most intense sport you can think of, and then you're going, well, actually don't swear over the team radio. That is, in my opinion, the broadcaster's job to make sure it's either not shown or cut out or whatever the guidelines are that they're now going to move forward with. It's not on the drivers to be PG when they feel a certain way about something. It's I know that it can't go around just swearing in front of children. I get that, but in terms of like team radios especially, it's bizarre because we want to see the drivers in their true form and how they're feeling, and that's what I think as fans we sort of relate to, and they are human. They do feel emotion.
Certainly when we hear Yuki Tsunoda, I think it's helped us get to know some of these drivers a lot better, hasn't it? And understand what's going on underneath the helmet.
Imola practice
Nico,
was always one,
yeah.
wasn't it? Yeah.
yeah, it was good. Nico, I mean, Martin Brundle in his column this week called it wasted energy from Max. And I just wonder if you agree with that at this point in the championship, with Lando closing in on him at quite a pace, if this is the sort of issue that he needs to be expending energy on.
Yeah, totally. I mean, from that point of view, but I mean, Max is very strong mentally. So if anybody can allow himself to do that, then it's Max. But if I was in Max's position, I would certainly not be engaging in this topic. I would just whatever, just keep my head down, do whatever is required until the end of the year. Because I really I would want to conserve like every ounce of energy into doing the best performance on track in order to bring this championship home. And it's such a dynamic that there's been launched, and every journalist is asking and this and that. It takes a little bit of focus away from the performance eventually, so not ideal, but as I said, Max is mentally so strong that if one guy can afford to have those kind of distractions, then it's him.
Just final point, Nico, those press conferences, obviously, working for Sky, in the media, we need them, and they're a hugely important part of what we do as broadcasters. But from a driver's perspective, what was your relationship like with the press and press conferences? And was it something you look forward to, or was it something you kind of dreaded and thought, oh God, I've got to do this again?
Look forward to? Are you kidding me? Like, that is not fun. No, not look forward to at all. If I could have chosen as a driver, it was just get to the track and work with the engineers. That was enjoyable, setting up the car, going out, driving, and that's it, nothing else. But it's a part of it to do sponsor work, to do work for the sponsors, appearances, to engage with the media, which is myself now as well. It's a part of it.
Yeah. It's an interesting perspective how it changes, obviously, from being driver to broadcaster. Very good. All right. Well, look, just time to tell you then about, there's not much to tell you about in terms of what's coming up, because obviously we've got a break. F1 is back for the US Grand Prix from the Circuit of the Americas in Austin. That's going to take place between the 18th and 20th of October. There's going to be, I'm sure, plenty to discuss between now and then. So we'll keep you company on the Sky Sports F1 podcast. Nico, what are you up to before F1 comes back? You got a busy few months?
So what am I up to? I'm actually going to spend some time in Singapore with the family. We're gonna be moving there,
nice.
Moving there for a while.
Are you?
Like literally living there as a social experience. So that's gonna be interesting. And apart from that, what else am I doing? Then I'll be back in Las Vegas for the race. But for really relationship building, networking, hosting a group, that's what I'm doing there, from the venture capital space, essentially. And that's it for now, yeah.
Intrigued you're moving to Singapore. That's after this weekend, going back and forth. Should have timed it so you could bring everything with you.
That's true. Yeah, timing was not ideal, but it was easier to do it later in the year.
Yeah, sure. And Matt, I guess, look, you got a month off. Or months to make content. It's quite demanding.
Yeah, a bit of content. Myself and Tommy are actually going on the road. We're taking our podcast and our live show tour to America. So that's what we're doing. We're flying out in a couple of weeks. Doing 5 destinations in the US, starting in Canada as well. It's going to be a busy holiday, as everyone's saying it is. But it should be good fun.
So you're going to be in auditoriums?
Yeah, theatres. Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be good fun. If you're in America, Nico, you're always welcome.
That's cool. That's great that you managed to attract the crowd live like that. That's awesome.
Thank you, mate.
Nico, thank you very much for joining us from your car. The internet just about held out, so that's fantastic. Thank you. And Matt, pleasure as always. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
Cheers.
Thank you.
So
bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.